combo later in the game if he's going to try to go through and make it all the way through his pitch stack. And then the snapback came in afterwards. Looks like no defense on that. But we're going to see the Tome of Aetherwind. We're going to respond at instant speed, and then come immediately in with the Aether Spindle. And so, even though it is currently Victor's turn, who used his action point to play for the Tome, Brayden has responded very quickly with a Kano into a buffed up Aether Spindle. That's going to be, looks like opting him 3. Victor appearing to be blocking 2 by pitching that Lessons in Lava. Now we're resolving Tome of Aetherwind. Hopefully, or Victor's hoping he hits some blues off of this. Oh, he's got the instant snapback as a fallback anyways. Paying for it with Zap. Brayden looks happy to take the damage. Victor is arsenaling, moving on to his turn. This game is moving very fast for a Kano mirror, I must say. Normally there's a lot more thinking and going back and forth. But these players seem to know what they want to do, and that's the 3rd Lessons in Lava we've seen so far this game. Unfortunately, I have lost track of the life totals here, the bouncing back and forth. I think both players are on comparable amounts of life. Brayden may have slightly more after that voltage bolt play. But Victor's holding some good combo cards in his hand, it looks like. Oh, but we're pitching to play out the Aether Spindle. Floating 2. Looks like we're blocking 3 with a blue Reverberate, pointing to both his gloves and his boots. And again, Victor pitching powerful cards. So he's got a pair of lovely yellow Majestics, and now he's got these 2 reds back to back there. It looks like he's... Well, this might be just because he had an all-red hand with the yellow. But... Oh, and here's the Tome of Fyendal off of the Tunic, so we're going to be clocking back up 6 life. We're pitching, we're Kanoing, we found a Gaze the Ages and a Reverberate of an indeterminate color. And there's the Gaze, so we're going to opt 2, it's going to come back to hand. Since he's met the requirements. Still floating 2 resources. Looks like he's liking those at the top. Another Gaze, well, that same Gaze coming back up. There's the Aether Spindle. And buffed up. Assuming for 5 here. Difficult to block. So it looks like we've blocked 4. So that opt 1 happening very quickly. Decides it's good staying on the top. Arsenaling and passing off to Victor for his turn. It was opening once again with a Tome of Aetherwind, with a Voltic and a Reverberate in hand, it looks like. Or 2 Voltics and a Reverberate in hand, it looks like. Hoping to see some blues. 5 cards to play off the top with here for Victor, as his action point is gone from playing the Tome. So that's the Gaze the Ages being played immediately, opting 2. It'll be coming to his hand. And we're leaving the pair of those on the top, it looks like. So there's the Chain Lightning. Coming in for 3. And there's another Tome backing it up. So that's all 3 Tomes from Victor now. Being played at instant speed from the effect of Chain Lightning. Yep, I can hear you, Steve. So it looks like Oh, I see. Sorry, folks. We're currently trying to get a second commentator here because, as much as I like talking, I prefer talking to other people, and I'm sure you would enjoy hearing a second voice rather than my own ramblings to myself. So, after a very long turn, Victor managed to push a bit of damage. Brayden's still holding a very full hand. We'll see what comes in. Starting with a Kano on his own turn for that tome. Drawing two, so just a straight +1 into his hand. And oh, brilliant. Updated life totals are fantastic to see. You can see the effect that 6 life gaining Tome of Fyendel had for Brayden here, basically evening the game, or being the difference in this game for how life is going. But as this game is going on, it's looking like Victor is going to be able to get to that pitch stack that he set up. Unfortunately, I've lost track of what's in Brayden's pitch stack, but we'll see how it goes. We're seeing a stir out of the gate here, so this could be the beginning of a very strong combo. But as with any Kano mirror, you always want to be wary of overcommitting, because once you do, your opponent has free reign to play at instant speed over you. So that's an Aether Flare for presumably 6 damage. And then I'm guessing on hit, we're going to be banishing the Chain Lightning that's still in hand. So we saw a strong amount of block coming from Victor there. Brayden choosing to pitch that Blazing Ether to pump that Crucible, applying to nothing in this case. And then looking like we've passed turn to Victor here. So we're just playing the Voltic out of Arsenal, opting not to bump it with the Crucible, even though there is that one floating, so perhaps fearing some response. But Brayden here, only being able to block 3 of it from his slightly lower Arcane Barrier loadout. We're seeing a buffed up Lessons in Lava, which Victor could fully block if he chose. He does have the Arcane Barrier for it. And I don't think he would be super opposed to that idea necessarily, because I don't think he wants to give Brayden a chance to shuffle up that deck and get a lot of those power yellow Majestics and that Blazing Ether we just saw, maybe up higher up. Yeah. So we're going to be blocking all 4 from Lessons in Lava, and then a snapback for 3. Victor seems happy to take that. So we've not seen any Aether Wildfires yet, because that plays out very interestingly in this matchup. So Victor opting to just draw back up, and Brayden on his turn choosing again to gain a lot of life from that Tome of Fyendel in Arsenal. Once again off the Tunic, maximizing that hand size, pitching that Blue Scalding Rain to reveal that Blazing Ether off the top. And now an Aether Wildfire as well. This is a hand that can scale damage very dangerously if Victor doesn't block it out. That being said, if he does block it out, there's really not much that these banished cards can do. So we're seeing the Aether Flare for 4 being blocked out. We're pitching the Potion of Deja Vu to play Gaze the Ages. This is interesting. We're very much playing off the top here on Brayden's side. We're opting to and the Gaze the Ages, of course, coming back to hand, now being pitched, so that Aether Flare can come down for 3, again, threatening that increased amount of damage off of Blazing Ether. So Victor, quite lower on life here. I think he's hoping he can just hold on long enough to get around the deck to see what he wants to see. So we're pitching a blue, pitching a Scour, it looks like, to come in with an Aether Spindle for 5. So he's guaranteed at least an opt 2 off of this, but he's being given the opt 5. Wow. Brayden must be very happy with his hand in order to allow that happening, because that is an entire turn that Victor gets to skip before he gets to the bottom of his deck, and more importantly, he gets to set himself up for the all-blue hand coming up that will let him defend so effectively against Brayden, while also giving him the offense that he needs to pitch a blue and then play a red off the top if Brayden doesn't come in for a lot. But Brayden does have a lot of life to play with here. So even though he took that 5, he's still up by about 9 life once we update the totals. So we're seeing Brayden play Tome of Aetherwind, immediately going into Kano, playing another Tome of Aetherwind, and is now holding a 6-card hand. Admittedly, no action point, but Storm Striders are still online. And with Victor at 13 life, there's definitely a chance that lethal gets threatened here. And my apologies, I got the life differential slightly wrong there. Even though Brayden took 5, he still had 12 life, not 6 as I previously thought. So Brayden opting to pass, it looks like, with 6 cards in his hand. Yep, there it is. So here's an attempted beginning of the end. Or are we... Oh, both players are keeping a lot of cards in their hand. And Victor just played out an energy potion, so now we're seeing a stir. Oh, wow. A very large Aether Spindle from Brayden here. Coming in for likely 8, assuming that's a red Aether Spindle. So Victor can try to block this out. Kind of needs to. He's very low at this point. And the question becomes, can he output enough damage in response? Doesn't look like it, so he's opting to block 3 of that, giving Brayden that opt 5. Very dangerous opt 5. Opt, of course, scaling exponentially in strength, which with each incremental 1, as you get to, at certain points, sculpt entire hands, sculpt entire turn cycles, and really set up whatever dream you want with your Kano deck. But now there's some thought going on as we decide on what this opt is. And if we keep pushing for lethal, it depends on how many blues Brayden's got in hand here, and whether he thinks Victor can respond. So we're ending a turn. Brayden's drawn back up to 4. Victor's now playing Tome of Findle out of his arsenal, so he will claw back that life that he lost last turn to that Aether Spindle. Once this resolves, if Brayden lets it resolve, I should say. But and there's the buffed up Sonic Boom using Metacarpus to get past that breakpoint. Oh, not using Metacarpus to get past that breakpoint. So Victor using the one floating from the energy potion and pitching a blue there to block it all out. So now that's resolved. Victor does get to draw, so he will gain back 4 life instead of 5, as his plan was slightly interrupted there by Brayden coming in with the Sonic Boom. I think it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if he had pumped up that Sonic Boom by 1. Could have let his turn keep going, possibly put on enough pressure. But now we're seeing double Kano reverberate into snapback. So depending on what colors those are, that's a lot of cheap damage coming up from Victor. So there's the reverberate. Unfortunately, I'm uncertain if it's a blue or a red. So we've blocked out with that Voltic Bolt. And here comes the snapback, presumably for 4 on this one. Brayden taking that damage, going into his own turn with 1 card in hand. Presumably just going to draw up for fear of Kano shenanigans from his opponent. And there's another tome from Victor. So even though both these Kanos have started off with 30 life, it looks like they're going to be having more than 40 life throughout the course of the game to work with from the sheer amount of life gain that Tome of Findle can represent in a Kano deck. Although I'm uncertain if Victor does get to gain all 5 life as Brayden chooses to not interrupt and threaten some arcane damage on this turn. We're going through the graveyard, seeing what threats we still need to work with, trying to figure out what's left in the opponent's deck, roughly where it is, how it's been pitch stacked. It's much easier to keep track of your own information about this than your opponent's, especially if there's a chance you're playing slightly different decks. Although I feel that this soon after Pro Tour, odds are everybody's kind of on that same, you know, top placing Kano list where you're going for the Ragamuffins Wildfire combo. Unfortunately, it's just very awkward into the Kano mirror because the Kano mirror is a very awkward thing. So we've got 2 Aether Flares here, threatening some stacking damage. First one's going to be coming in for 4. Blocking off 2 of that with Sonic Boom. And here we see another Kano activation into an Aether Spindle. Oh, and Victor's going all in here. He's got nothing left on the defensive. Brayden, however, choosing to block. And there's the Blazing Ether to come in for a couple points of damage. Brayden's going to tick up his Tunic, presumably just pass back as he's done a few times so far this game. Well, there's a Nourishing Emptiness. Always fun to see in the Kano mirror. in a matchup where nobody has enough armor to stop it. But we're Kanoing in response. There's the Gaze the Ages. We're Kanoing again, see if we can activate that Gaze the Ages, bring it back into hand, and then go for another Kano, possibly off of that Wildfire. Or Aether Flare, pardon me. Too many cards with Aether in the name. And there is the Gaze the Ages. So Brayden opting to, where the Gaze the Ages will come back into hand and then possibly be used. Yeah, both those go into the bottom. Didn't see much that he liked there. Victor pitching to block that Aether Flare. Oh, so it looks like it was a blue in that instance, if he's still floating two after that. Kanoing off the top, and there is a Scalding Rain for presumably 3, if that's the blue. Judging by Victor's fingers, it was. And then Brayden playing the snapback on the end of Victor's turn there. Having previously played the Aether Flare and the Gaze the Ages earlier on, although those had been moved over to the graveyard in the meanwhile. The life gap here is slowly narrowing as Brayden is taking a bit more of a passive, defensive, playing on Victor's turn approach, which is interesting given that he's running the lower Arcane Barrier in this matchup, but it exposes him to less danger had he overcommitted on his own turns. So I'm assuming Brayden is thinking here of what to do, or perhaps Victor's thinking of what to do after Brayden has attempted to pass priority and drop. So we pitched that Eye of Ophidia, which was that very first card that Victor pitched at the beginning of the game. So he knows he's at a stack. He's got that Sonic Boom in hand. There's the Aether, Blazing Aether, pardon me. There's a Lessons in Lava and that Sonic Boom that we saw pitched earlier in his hand. Unfortunate, because those would have been a fantastic chain to play off the top to then end with a Blazing Aether. Victor now continuing to think about what his next moves are here. I wouldn't be surprised if he went for the Sonic Boom for 4 and saw what he saw off the top. And it gives you another shot at another instant speed attack, or not attack, an instant speed source of arcane damage that would then compound its way further into the Blazing Aether that's currently on the board. Now, of course, doing so would cost him a Storm Striders, but with the Blazing Aether there, it would not surprise me if he commits, because he knows Brayden can block a maximum of 3. So at this point, I don't think that the question. I think Victor's trying to figure out how to get there, being reasonably confident that he can get there. So we're pitching. It looks like for 4. There's an Aether Flare. Hopefully it's a red. Oh, he's holding double Sonic Boom in hand now. Interesting. Although it doesn't look like he... Oh, he has just enough to pay for it, albeit unbuffed if he does choose to activate the Storm Striders. But it looks like he's opting to not commit too much there. And there's a Sonic Boom for 4, for 5 now with the Metacarpus nodes. He was debating doing that a few turns previously. So this will be going through. And that Gaze the Ages now, he knows what's coming up. Victor being able to block a maximum of 4 of this. Now he's thinking on the defense. Pitching both those Sonic Booms to block out almost all of that Sonic Boom. Unless he chose to not use the Metacarpus nodes on it. Maybe there was an issue with the amount that was pitched. Because otherwise something should have been banished by Kano. I'm uncertain. I may have missed a little something that happened there. My apologies. But I mean, Kano mirrors. What can you do? It's an it's an interesting, very tight game at the best of times. And I've seen it happen often enough that players on their own have the people playing the game have lost track of whose turn it actually is and who gets to do what, and tunic counters can get really messy and action points can get really messy. But it seems that both these wizard players are pretty experienced. So, well, I know for a fact Victor is quite an experienced wizard player. Oh, here we see a buffed up Lessons in Lava. Brayden will not be able to fully block. Opting to Kano before that damage comes through. A Chain Lightning, which can be very effective at starting that instant speed combo on your opponent's turn. Really allows you to play out your entire hand when combined with Storm Striders. The idea being Storm Striders into another attack, into Chain Lightning at instant speed, into the other wizard action at instant speed. So we're Kanoing and holding priority. And we're doing that twice. So here's the Ragamuffins combo. We're drawing one card, and that's a card back on the top. We're wondering what it could be. It's probably going to be an Aether. Oh, it's a Lessons in Lava. Interesting. Now the question is, does he have the resources to pay for all of these? Because Chain Lightning is going to be one. Lessons in Lava is going to be one. That's a Blazing Aether that was pitched for that Lessons. We're still holding priority on one Kano activation. Or if that die is correct, we are. Yeah, and it looks like he peaked a Voltic Bolt there. Chain Lightning is banished with not much else to do. So now Victor's Lessons in Lava is going to hit through. revealing a Scalding Rain, which is going to be Kano off the top, and then using that one previous floating to come in for those extra few points of damage. Now, rather dangerously, I don't think that Brayden has a hand on his own turn, whereas Victor can just throw stuff at the board at a generally defenseless Brayden. Those are some unfortunate flips, and that was a Ragamuffins play that didn't quite turn into the combo that it was. Yeah, and there you go. The Voltic Bolt Metacarpus buffed up.